Should we wipe out all mosquitoes? I know they are sometimes really annoying, but hey, I tell you, they have some benefits for the environment. More on that later. Hi and welcome. I'm Sandra Twinobudio and happy to have you with us for a fresh episode of Eco Africa.
Hi, Sandra. Hi, everyone. I'm Chris Elems in Lagos, Nigeria, and together with my lovely co host, I'm happy to bring you today's show. Stay tuned because we have some exciting stories for you coming up. Why blockchain is playing a growing role in conservation in Zambia. How cement could be made more climate friendly. And how a fungus in Kenya can help to get rid of invasive plants. Let's start off in Zambia today, a country that depends very much on agriculture, forest, and wildlife. These resources are being lost at a rapid pace. Farmers are facing great difficulties in diversifying their crops and adapting to harsher weather conditions. Now, one of the most pressing challenges they are facing is also a lack of access to affordable loans to try out different things. We ventured to Lusaka to explore potential solutions.
What do bees and forests have to do with the digital world? A startup in Lusaka, Zambia is using technology to benefit farmers and nature. This is the team behind Pollen, a phone app that enables farmers to both save money and grant loans. With the app, small groups of farmers create a so-called savings circle. Members of a circle agree a fixed amount, which they then each deposit every month. Members can then either draw loans from this money pool or earn interest on their savings. Many farmers here face considerable challenges. They need money to fund solutions. In Zambia, almost 300,000 hectares of forests are cleared every year for charcoal, timber, and agricultural land.
My colleague and I actually were just like discussing about what was prevailing at that time. So there was some form of drought, and most people couldn't farm, and they resorted to cutting down of trees. If they don't cut down trees to make charcoal, then what else are they going to do? Then we thought, okay, how about beekeeping?
The team suggested smallholders produce raw honey, which they would then buy, package, and resell in supermarkets. Chianika Nakasamu and his team provide free beekeeping workshops, granting the farmers an alternative to charcoal production. The bees bring other benefits too.
For example, cross-pollination. The fruits, the end product of whatever you are growing in your farm, whether they are fruity trees that you have grown, whether they are tomatoes, whether it's maize or sunflower, it's a benefit to both of you.
Philip Zulu is a small-scale maize farmer. He has diversified into beekeeping and fish farming, making him far less vulnerable to drought. Half of his farmland is now indigenous forests, ideal for bees to forage. But beehives are expensive. For 20 hives, Zulu needed the equivalent of 500 euros, an amount which he would now be able to borrow through the Pollen Savings Circle. Many farmers don't have bank accounts.
It's easier for Zulu because he doesn't actually has to produce, document for collateral, and he's getting loan from the people that he stays within the community, and they know him. Yeah. So and that way, and the interest rate that Zulu is getting the loan is kind of cheap.
In the savings circle, farmers can agree on their own interest rates. These are typically about 5 to 10%, which is a far cry from the 50 to 100% interest often demanded by informal money lenders. Chianika Nakasamu and his team hope their platform will empower farmers to invest in bigger collaborative projects.
With a platform, like this, it gives an opportunity for farmers once they put their money together. Maybe they might try and say, okay, we're going to drill a borehole and do an irrigation where they just have maybe a farm where they produce different variety of lots, and then from there it becomes also a sustainable income for them, which actually by that then they mitigate the issue of climate changes.
Philip Zulu is eager to try out the system with the new app. Pollen is in a test phase until the end of 2023. Farmers hope it will enable them to diversify and expand their small holdings.
The village banking system on the mobile, I think it would be helpful because people would see their money in circulation. People can borrow without the signing of contract agreements, as long as your balances are tarring.
The Pollen app is built with blockchain technology, a digital system that allows people to transfer money without the need for traditional banks. All transactions on the platform are recorded. Chianika Nakasamu's sister is also involved in the business. She says her generation is embracing new technologies to solve urgent issues in Zambia.
We have seen really the gradual degradation. Like when you're growing up, I had a forest near my place and you go there and there's nothing anymore. So this is something that we're passionate about, and it's something that we're also creating opportunities from through advocacy, through social enterprises, just like we're doing.
Pollen should be available for farmers in 2024. In the meantime, Chianika Nakasamu is working with 2,000 beekeepers. The startup has already sold 30 tons of honey in supermarkets, a sweet way to empower farmers and protect both bees and forests at the same time.
Let's talk about the health of plants now. Well, often chemicals are used to get rid of diseases and to get better yields. Not such a great idea for the environment because just like that, it can be badly damaged.
Well, there are other ways. On the edge of Kenya's only surviving patch of tropical rainforest, a fungal weapon is being developed, and this seems to be a state-of-the-art laboratory and a role model for other countries to help in natural ways.
These flowers grow well in Kenya, too well in fact. Striga or purple witchweed might be pretty, but it's devastating to crops. It flourishes in dry soil and poses a serious threat to harvests, as agronomist Dorcas Kemboi explains.
It's a parasitic weed, and it can cause damage to up to 100% in the farm. As you can see, this maize, it is stunted. By the time you are seeing a striga emerging, the destruction is already done because striga seed is underground.
The parasitic plant attaches itself to the roots of crops and then extracts nutrients from them at their expense. They start to wilt while the weed flourishes. Margaret Klisa knows the problem all too well. Witchweed regularly decimates her maize and millet fields.
We've been struggling with the problem of witchweed for many years. We plant crops, but the yields are no good. We try to stop it spreading by sweeping up debris and animal waste and distributing it in the fields, but it doesn't make any difference. Last season I planted a whole acre. But from that, I only harvested 1 bag of maize. That doesn't even leave enough for me to replant a seed.
But US and Kenyan scientists have identified a fungus that kills the parasite. It's highly effective, even in tiny amounts, such as might fit on a toothpick. This discovery led to the Toothpick Project. Dorcas Kemboi manages the project's toothpick company. Her team of scientists produce the fungus that kills the striga plant.
Currently, we're doing a research on the biocontrol for striga weed using Physaria moxysporum. This fungus was isolated from a wilting striga weed, and it was grown to make the biocontrol solution known as Kichawiki. What we do in this lab is multiply the fungus as much as we can so that it can quantify to a mass that can serve the farmers in great capacities.
For the last 5 years, Kemboi has traveled to villages in Western Kenya to introduce farmers to the product. It costs about 30 euros to treat a 1-acre field. Until now, farmers have been uprooting the destructive plant to prevent its seeds from spreading further, because once they're in the soil, they stay there for years. Chemical pesticides haven't proved effective, and farmers are left with failed harvests. That's why the Toothpick Project is supported by a number of NGOs focused on food security.
There is the effect of climate change. The earth is warming, the soils are warming, and we are seeing striga also moving even to some wetter zones and to also some colder regions. If that is experienced in our high production areas, then it means the food insecurity also is it becomes much more.
Kenya isn't the only country with a striga problem. According to the UN, 14 African nations are infested with the weed. This makes the project all the more important. If successful, it could be introduced in other countries too. So, Dorcas Kemboi is working with 80 farmers to help produce more fungal inoculum.
The kichawi kill that can be produced at our laboratory is not enough to serve farmers across the 7 counties we're operating in. So that is the reason why we're engaging village inoculum producers at the village level who can help us prepare the final product.
Production itself is relatively straightforward. The fungus just needs to grow. 20 kilos of rice are cooked and a small amount of fungus is added, then left for 3 to 5 days to incubate. The resulting 40 kilos of fungus-enriched rice are enough for 1 acre of cropland. The researchers found that farmers needed to treat their fields for 2 years. That's 4 crop sowings. That was enough to banish the striga and restore crop yields. For smallholders especially, it's a relatively easy remedy that the farmers can apply for themselves.
Wow, really interesting. So listen up. I've been beaten by these annoying litter bags way too many times in my life. You too probably. But actually, mosquitoes can also be good litter bags. Yes, you heard right. Here is more.
They are believed to have killed Alexander the Great, and they helped the US win independence from the British. Mosquitoes have shaped human history. They are the world's deadliest animal. The viruses and parasites they carry still kill hundreds of thousands of people every single year. That's why scientists are developing technology that could completely wipe out certain mosquito species. But critics argue their extinction could just be the beginning, that other species could follow, destabilizing entire ecosystems. So just because we could kill off an entire species, should we? Mosquitoes kill more people every year than all other animals combined, some 700,000 annually. It's actually the parasites and viruses hitching a ride. From Zika, yellow fever, and West Nile to the most deadly.
Malaria has been the killer, across our existence from our hominid ancestral evolution all the way till present day, unfortunately.
Malaria is responsible for around 80% of mosquito-related deaths, and almost all of those are children under the age of 5, mostly living in Africa. The majority of mosquitoes don't carry this lethal parasite. Most of the more than 3,500 different types are in fact harmless. Only Anopheles mosquitoes can carry malaria. Nowadays, the disease is transmitted predominantly in tropical and subtropical parts of the world. For more than a century now, scientists have been trying to come up with ways of destroying the Anopheles mosquito. Larvicides, insecticides, they've had varying degrees of success. So over the last few decades, scientists have turned to a new method of reducing mosquito numbers: genetic modification.
The ability to transmit disease is influenced by a number of genetic traits. If you are able to manipulate them, then you might be able to develop mosquitoes that do not transmit malaria.
Andrea Crisanti and his team are genetically modifying Anopheles gambiae mosquitoes, the species that transmits malaria in Africa. Only female mosquitoes are able to bite humans and transmit malaria. They need the proteins in our blood to make eggs.
We focus on genes that are able to impair a mosquito reproductive. And we were able to manipulate this gene and generate a female mosquito that have male traits and do not bite.
To edit the gene, they used CRISPR, a relatively new technology that is used to modify DNA. As a result, even the female offspring of the modified mosquito were born with mouthparts that could not pierce skin, rendering them unable to feed from blood. It also made them sterile. Additionally, the scientists used the gene drive. It increases the odds of the modified gene being passed on to offspring. These two methods, genetic manipulation and gene drive, led to the complete collapse of the test population within a year. So, that was in test conditions. If released into the wild, these genetically altered mosquitoes have the potential to drive the Anopheles gambia species to extinction, and that would drastically reduce malaria transmission. The scientists believe the modification would not necessarily reach all areas where the species is found. But containment of living animals isn't always so easy. Take the rat. As humans began to travel the high seas, rodent species stowed away on ships. They ended up overwhelming island nations. Gene drive opponents argue that, like invasive species, genetically altered mosquitoes would migrate.
It's really a concern that these organisms will spread uncontrollably and possibly crash populations or possibly lead to extinctions of species. They're designed to spread aggressively throughout a species and also to spread geographically across borders.
The point is, how would the potential extinction of the Anopheles gambia mosquito impact ecosystems? Just like bees and butterflies, many mosquito species are pollinators, transferring pollen from flower to flower. So what would the disappearance of the Anopheles mean for plants? And what about the fish, birds, and bats that feed on mosquitoes? Then there's the genetic alteration itself. There's the possibility of it being passed on to other species of mosquito, putting them at risk.
We need to decide what risks we're willing to take in order to do something like save the environment, or in the case of malaria drives, save human lives.
Wiping out species that cause death and destruction may sound positive, but once they are gone, what next? Where do we draw the line?
Using a technology that's, instrumentalizing extinction as a tool, that's a new threshold that human beings have not crossed before.
So mosquitoes could be at the center of another major shift in human history.
We need to play that careful line of really thinking through the first use of these things and what that will look like and how it will work out, and take reasonable risks.
But as scientists still don't know so much about the potential consequences of unleashing animals with a genetically modified gene drive, it is hard to evaluate those risks.
Okay, good to know. So, to change the topic, did you know that the construction industry is one of the worst polluters? Yes, it is true. That is because so many raw materials are needed.
Yes, and they are being used to build more and more. Just look at the exploding population here in Nigeria. But there are ways to make building greener, as you see in this week's Doing Your Bits.
These bags contain the building material of the future. Green cement that's almost carbon-free. It has the potential to make building much more climate-friendly.
The main problem with traditional cement is the CO2 emissions it generates. Producing 1 ton of traditional cement releases nearly 1 ton of CO2 into the atmosphere.
More than 4.6 billion tons of cement are used globally every year, and the trend is rising. So the construction industry is putting a huge burden on the climate. Cement production is very energy intensive. That's partly why it releases so much CO2. But now manufacturers around the world are developing new processes, including this one from France.
The reason why our cement has much less carbon than traditional cement is the production process that we use. There's no gas involved, no firing. Our raw materials come from recycling because we use industrial waste. And thanks to our solar trackers, we're able to generate around 50% of our own power.
environ 50% de notre propre consommation.
The result is a cement with an impressively small carbon footprint. Green concrete is being produced by a growing number of companies worldwide, while others are working towards it, creating the foundation for a more climate-friendly future.
And how about you? If you're also doing your bit, tell us about it. Visit our website or send us a tweet. #DoingYourBit. We share your stories.
Back to Africa now, where the rivers are lifelines in many parts of the continent. Their waters are used for both domestic and agricultural purposes, making a lot of people reliant on the rivers for their livelihoods. But increased migration to urban areas is taking its toll. In Johannesburg, the Henops River is chronically polluted, with devastating consequences for its biodiversity and communities living along its banks. Now, local volunteers are working to limit the damage.
Piles of rubbish, washed up heavy rains. It's a common sight in densely populated areas along the Henops River. This spot is just a few meters from Thembisa Township, home to more than 500,000 people.
Our children play around here and we buy food that is sold just next to the river here. And then that food is contaminated. Everyone is getting sick, of which is not a conducive environment for us now. It's not safe.
Representatives from the South African NGO Fresh take stock of the devastation. Their mission is to restore the Henops River and its surrounding wetlands with the help of volunteers.
We're just a few kilometers below the source of this river. This is beautiful fountain water. It should be crystal clear, but it's incredibly polluted. If we don't pick up this trash, no one's going to pick it up.
Today, the team from Fresh wants to inspect one of their litter traps. 4 have been installed on the river's upper course. The NGO has invented its own traps. They are constructed from thick wire cables woven through nets and filled with recycled polystyrene. The contraption is anchored on either side of the river.
It mostly catches styrofoam in the floods. It also works as a sediment trap to slow the water down, so it sediments out a lot of sand here.
And that sand also serves as a home for beneficial organisms. It prevents further erosion too. The source of the Henops River is situated east of Johannesburg. After leaving the urban areas behind, it meanders through fields and valleys until it eventually joins the Limpopo River system. It later ends up in the Indian Ocean. This intricate system of waterways supports millions of people in both South Africa and 3 neighboring countries. This river is an important source of drinking water. It's also vital for agricultural crops. Farmers like Johan Steenberg are very concerned.
Sometimes the river is totally black because of the sewage. It's very bad for us. We're worried about the phosphor in the water. It go into the ground, it go into the crops, and I don't think it's healthy for the ground. It's also not healthy for people.
And that's not all. Large amounts of raw sewage are spilling into the Henops. Water samples are tested for E. coli bacteria to assess fecal contamination. Near the river source, E. coli concentration has been measured at 100,000 times above the accepted limit. So Fresh is now pushing to get the river landscape officially declared a nature conservation area. As a protected biodiversity corridor meandering through the most urbanized areas on the continent, it would help to revitalize South Africa's industrial heartland. On Earth Day, a group from Fresh set out to demonstrate to the authorities the potential of a cleaner river system. They returned the litter trap on a mission to remove 60 tons of waste from this spot in one day.
It's beautiful, the river's breathing. I think the whole wetland is looking much better. I think we can restore this place.
It's a wetland area. So if it gets polluted
And then indirectly we are killing ourselves as well, because this water won't be able to sustain life and sustain us. So we're dependable to this water system.
Time is flying, and it was really great to have you with us today. It is a goodbye from Kampala, right here in Uganda. I really hope you enjoyed the show.
And bye from me in Nigeria. If you want to know more, check out the social media channel shown on your screen. Hopefully, we'll see you next time. Bye-bye.